During my wife's funeral, Kevin, my son, hit me with a painful accusation. He said I was a failure. I'm David Johnson, and at that moment, he didn't realize how mistaken he was. Kevin thought he had it all figured out about our lives, his mom's incredible $45 million tech business, and his dad just teaching computer courses at a community college. But he was totally unaware that his mom's will was about to turn everything he believed on its head. You see, the biggest truths have a way of staying hidden in plain view. So that day, I didn't react. I just stood there while my son told 200 people that I was the epitome of all that disappointed his generation, calling me unambitious and unsuccessful. But the backstory didn't begin there. It kicked off in 1995 with an idea that could revolutionize everything. Back in the day, I was slaving away night shifts at a computer repair place in Richardson, Texas, making $11 an hour. Come sunrise, I was in my garage putting together the pieces of what would become TechFlow Systems. The idea? Streamlining how small businesses handle their inventory through this up-and-coming thing called cloud-based software. Nobody was talking about the cloud back then. They thought I'd gone off the deep end. Linda, she was our rock, and we were expecting Kevin then. She'd come home from her bank job to a garage cluttered with wires, screens, and notes she couldn't make sense of. "David, what are you doing out here?" she'd ask. "Crafting the future," was my go-to reply, and I believed every word. By 1998, that crazy idea had landed its first client, a plumbing supply firm in Dallas, forking over $300 a month for our services. In 6 months, we were 12 clients strong. By 2000, we had 87 clients. In 2001, Linda left her bank gig to join me full-time. Her people skills and knack for organization were exactly what our venture needed. Most importantly, she invested in the dream wholeheartedly. Kevin was 6 when we hit $1 million in yearly revenue. He would draw at the office while Linda sealed deals on her phone. To him, she was the one making things happen by being on the phone, while his dad just lost himself in computer screens in the garage. And that was okay. I was all about tech, the coding, the architecture, the future. It was all me. Linda was the driving force behind sales and client relationships. We were a formidable duo, but Kevin only saw what happened in the office, not in the garage. Fast forward to 2010, a tough year with our marriage falling apart. Linda said we'd grown apart. The divorce? It was a battlefield. She ended up with the house, 80% of TechFlow, and primary custody of Kevin. I got the garage, 20% of the company, and occasional weekend fatherhood. Publicly, Linda was considered the genius, her public image and connections seen as TechFlow's true assets. I didn't have much fight left. I just signed the forms. Linda quickly shifted gears, upping Kevin's school to an expensive private academy in North Dallas, acquiring a flashy new BMW, upgrading the downtown office, and handing out business cards declaring herself CEO and founder. I moved into a small apartment in Plano and picked up a teaching gig at Collin County Community College, 3 classes a week, bringing home $2,800 a month. To my students, I was just another guy who hadn't quite made it in tech. Visits with Kevin gradually dwindled, from every second weekend to just holidays, maybe even Christmas if I was lucky. As a senior, Kevin told me, "Dad, get serious. Look at Mom, she's built something real." By then, TechFlow had become a $12 million giant. Linda expanded the company across 3 states, employed 47 people, and was celebrated as an entrepreneur. Her face graced the cover of the Dallas Business Journal, hailed as the visionary who foresaw the cloud's potential. I read that article from my modest apartment, eating a microwave dinner. Technically, my 20% ownership was valued at $2.4 million, but dividends weren't rolling in due to Linda's salary and reinvestments. All I got were quarterly reports showcasing her success. Kevin graduated with honors from SMU, grabbed an MBA from Northwestern, and became a director at TechFlow in 2018, handling strategic development. At 26, he made more money than I'd ever dreamed of. Just a month ago, he bought a $95,000 Tesla Model S, sharing his achievement on LinkedIn and giving his mom credit for teaching him how to build something out of nothing. So it's been 3 weeks since Linda passed away. She fought lung cancer for 8 agonizing months, and it finally beat her. Her son, Kevin, took care of everything, from the funeral service to the flowers and the reception that followed. I was just sitting at the back, listening to everyone talk about how amazing Linda was in the business world. That's when Kevin got up on stage to make his speech. With a strong voice, he started with, "My mother was a trailblazer, standing there at the podium in St. Matthew's Methodist Church. She didn't just create TechFlow systems, she built it from nothing. Now it has $45 million in yearly earnings and provides jobs for 230 employees over 4 states. This is what the American dream looks like." The audience, around 200 people, nodded along and clapped. These were Linda's co-workers, clients, and business partners who knew the polished version of her tale. She was the visionary, the one who had raised a tech empire, while her husband, who'd found less success, continued as a teacher. Then Kevin locked eyes with me, and everyone knew what was coming. Some people in this room abandoned their dreams, got too comfortable with failure and settled, he claimed, letting his words hang in the air. My mother wasn't like that. She didn't settle and she didn't quit. She proved to me that true success is about actions, not excuses. His words left a heavy silence in the room. Everybody there realized Kevin was pointing a finger at me, the guy who had crashed and burned after a rough divorce, the warning story of what not to do. But Kevin wasn't done. He continued, "TechFlow Systems will honor my mom's legacy. It's her vision, her standards, her excellence, the essence of leadership." After the event, people steered clear of me. I got a few polite nods here and there, maybe a quick "sorry for your loss," but then they'd move on. No one wanted to associate with the man who Kevin had so publicly humiliated. But honestly, it was more than just the public embarrassment at stake. On Tuesday morning, Linda's will was to be read at Williams & Associates law firm. Everyone assumed Kevin would get everything: the business, the house in North Dallas, the investments, the life insurance, probably around $45 million worth. My 20% slice of TechFlow was probably going to end up with Kevin too. Linda had tossed around the idea of simplifying ownership in one of the few times we talked last year. If that's what she decided, then my last tie to the company I co-founded would disappear. The quarterly earnings would stop, and the modest cash flow from my share would go dry. At 61, I'd have to rely solely on my gig at the community college and hope Social Security was kind when I hit 67. But to me, it wasn't just about the money. It was about legacy, history, and setting the record straight. 14 years, I'd watched Linda take credit for the hard work I did. I saw Kevin grow up thinking his dad amounted to a failure who made nothing worth mentioning. And I saw my own son puff up with arrogance, believing that success was something inherited like brown eyes or tall genes. Kevin never really got it. He didn't know what it was like to create the original TechFlow code. He hadn't lived through debugging a management algorithm for 3 months or building a database setup fit to scale from a handful of clients to thousands. He never put his house up to finance server gear or pulled 18-hour days to meet a critical deadline. All Kevin ever understood was that Mom had wealth and Dad didn't. Mom got invited to business shindigs, and Dad was stuck teaching intro to Microsoft Excel. Mom had a flashy BMW, and Dad was rolling in a 2018 Toyota Camry with 89,000 miles on it. The will reading was on the calendar for 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Kevin already had plans in motion. An assistant was ready to draft an announcement about his new big-shot role as CEO and majority owner. He had client meetings set for Wednesday, and he'd been busy on social media, promising to carry on Mom's fabulous legacy. But he didn't really know what the will said. Nobody did, except for Linda and her lawyer, Sarah Williams. I met Sarah once before, back at a Christmas party in 2019. Out of the blue, she pulled me aside and asked, "David, do you still have any old development notes from when TechFlow started?" Caught off guard, I replied, "Yeah, I do. Why do you ask?" She just gave a little shrug and said, "Just curious. Linda once mentioned you were quite a trailblazer back in the day." Initially, I thought she was just making conversation, but that question lingered. Why on earth would Linda's estate lawyer care about my old programming notes? Just 3 days after the funeral, I got a call from Michael Davis, TechFlow's CTO. Michael had been with us for 22 years, one of the first people I hired back when all of us could fit around my tiny kitchen table. His voice on the line had that undercurrent of urgency. "David, we need to talk." When we met at a nearby Starbucks, Michael leaned in and whispered, "Can we speak somewhere private?" His eyes darted around anxiously, hinting at some kind of revelation. He slid a simple manila envelope across the table. "I've been holding on to this for Linda. She made me promise to hand it over only after the funeral." Inside, I found a series of emails exchanged between Linda and Sarah Williams from over the past year and a half. The subject line of the first one hit me like a ton of bricks. "Correcting the record. TechFlow's true founder." This was far from trivial, striking at the heart of Kevin's understanding of himself, me, and our shared history. For nearly 30 years, Kevin's self-image was built around viewing his mom as a triumph story and his dad, me, as a cautionary note. That reading of the will on Tuesday was set to upend everything he knew about success, family, and what it meant to create and own something. The very next day after Linda's funeral, Kevin appeared at my doorstep without warning. I was buried in grading midterm papers from my database management class when I spotted his Tesla parking outside. "We need to talk, Dad," he announced from the door. Once inside, he stood for a moment, taking in the room, old furniture, stacks of textbooks, and the single photo of him at 8. "This place could use some cheer," he remarked. "It's home for me," I shrugged. Kevin drifted to the window, looking down at 2 kids splashing in the pool while their mom scrolled through her phone. "Mom's funeral got me thinking," he said, still facing away. "As a kid, I always made excuses for you. I'd tell people you worked in computers, making it sound grand, like you were some Steve Jobs, instead of teaching dropouts Excel. I kept my focus steady on the papers. Your mom gave you a great life, Kev. She did all she could for us," I said calmly. Kevin turned, meeting my eyes. "You had one job, look after the family, and you failed at even that." "That's one way to see it," I countered. He interrupted. "It's the only way. Look around." He gestured at the simple apartment, outdated furniture, and ancient TV. "This is what failure looks like." Setting down my pen, I asked, "What's this really about, Kevin?" "I need clarity before the will reading. TechFlow is mine now. Preserving Mom's legacy requires maintaining the company's standing. And that entails no more stories about the good old days where you insinuate you had a role in TechFlow's rise. Mom made it in spite of you, not with you." He flashed his phone, showing a LinkedIn post draft. "Honored to continue my mother's legacy as CEO of TechFlow Systems. Her brilliance and entrepreneurship have created something remarkable. Excited to build upon what she started." "That's understandable," I nodded. "What's not is you suggesting you had any part in TechFlow's achievements. Honestly, Dad, it's a bitter reality." "Bitter for who? Me, the memory of your mom, or for the 230 people working at TechFlow hoping they're more than just employees at a company born from a divorce settlement?" Leaning back, I challenged him. Is that seriously all TechFlow was to you? A consequence of divorce? Mom could have walked away clean with half, but instead let me keep 20% out of kindness, something you had no hand in building. Is that what she told you? No, that's what I witnessed, Kevin contended. Mom finalizing deals, making headlines, earning accolades for innovation and leadership while you were here grading. All right, let me put this into a more casual, story-like way for you. So, there I was, just hanging out in the room, feeling the tension dial down when I figured I'd grab some water first, gave everyone a moment. Then I went, you know, thinking back to the early days of TechFlow. But right then, Kevin jumps in with a "Dad, please don't." Anyway, I can't help but think back to writing that initial bit of code way back in 1995. I remember sketching out the database design and burning the midnight oil until like 3 in the morning. Now, to break it down for you, I was deep into this project, an inventory tracking system that absolutely crushed it for our first big client. Mom had let me in on how you put down the basics with the coding and all that jazz. But then she was all about how managing a business takes more than just tech skills. You need vision, leadership, strategic thinking. That was her arena. She took what began as a passion project and transformed it into a full-fledged company. Then, Kevin's phone pings. He glances at it, shoots back a quick reply. That was Mike Davis, he mentions. You know, the CTO of TechFlow. Mike's setting up some meetings for Wednesday to make sure Kevin can smoothly transition into the CEO role. Mike's always shown a lot of respect for Mom's leadership. Yeah, Mike's a pretty solid dude. He's fully aware of what genuine leadership looks like and has seen her steer a little side venture into a huge business valued across multiple states, now worth about $45 million. I corrected him, kinda offhand, with the latest figure. Actually, it's $47 million, thanks to the most recent quarterly report. Kevin stopped tapping on his phone. And how do you know that? He shoots my way. I tell him, I still get the financials, remember? I got 20% of it. Kevin scoffs, throws back something about my supposed pity shares, and then tucks his phone away. Enjoy that last report, Dad, he says, totally businesslike. After Tuesday, you're out of TechFlow. Had Linda mentioned this piece of news? Nah, didn't need to, he states. Just makes sense. We can't have a failed entrepreneur dragging down a successful company's image. It's bad for everyone. Kevin said this on his way out, but before he left, he threw me this stern message. Once I'm running things, step back from TechFlow, all right? No calling folks, emailing, or showing up at the office, just clean cut. And if I don't step back, I asked, you'll see what a restraining order feels like. When Kevin left, I was glued to the kitchen table for hours, just processing it all, his words replaying like he had this all figured out, as if I was the clueless one. He was in the dark about what was going to unfold at the reading of the will next Tuesday. But I had a sneaking suspicion that Linda was up to something. There was an envelope from Michael Davis sitting on my kitchen table, untouched. Maybe it was time to see what's inside. Inside, the envelope had 8 pages worth of emails between Linda and her lawyer, Sarah Williams, since April 2023. The first email had a subject line that really caught my attention. Setting the record straight, TechFlow's true founder. Linda had written something along these lines. Sarah, there's something that's been heavy on me since my diagnosis. Kevin thinks I built TechFlow systems from ground zero. The business world believes this. Even our employees do. But it's not the reality, and I can't let this myth determine my son's future inheritance. David, he was the actual founder of TechFlow, the brainchild, the software, the foundational tech. That was all him. I did the sales and admin side, but the company thrives today because of David's initial vision and groundbreaking work. The will has to convey this truth. Kevin needs to see what genuine entrepreneurship is about. I found myself reading that email at least 4 times before diving into what Sarah had to say. Sarah was like, "Linda, this is massive. Are you sure you want to redo your will because of something that happened 25 years ago? Kevin's expecting to take over TechFlow." Linda shot back 3 days later. "I'm not going to be around much longer, Sarah. Lung cancer's a real jerk. What Kevin thinks doesn't matter. What matters is the truth. David was the real force behind TechFlow. Kevin needs to understand that real success isn't something handed to you on a silver platter. It's earned through hard work, vision, and sacrifice. Make sure all the paperwork tells the real story about TechFlow. I want everything laid out clear as day." Then there was this email from Sarah dated January 15th, about 6 weeks before Linda passed. It read, "All the documents are ready. I've put together an extensive history on TechFlow's beginnings, complete with David's original patents, source code, and development notes. Michael Davis is willing to step up as a witness if necessary. Looks like your son's going to be in for quite a wake-up call." After reading all that, I put the emails aside and went to my closet. I pulled out a box I hadn't opened in about 5 years. Inside it were my old notes from when TechFlow was just starting up. Stacks of pages filled with hand-drawn algorithms and database designs. Back in '95, there I was, sitting at my kitchen table, cranking out system blueprints and data schematics, while my little 3-year-old Kevin was probably tearing things apart somewhere, and Linda was busy with her job at First National Bank. Every bit of my work was dated and signed the old-school way, by hand. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Michael Davis. He started off by asking if I'd gone through Linda's emails. I told him I had. Then he dropped a bomb on me. Turns out Linda had tasked him the previous month with compiling a thorough report on TechFlow's journey. From the very first patent to the last code tweak, every major decision from 1995 all the way to 2010. She wanted Kevin to find out who truly laid the foundation for the company he was supposed to run. I heard some traffic noise in the background. He was calling from his car, I figured. "I've been TechFlow's CTO for 22 years, he said. "I remember when you rolled out the first inventory management system. You sorted the scaling issues out in '98. You even created that client portal that let us compete with companies 10 times our size." He was driving the point home. Linda was great at biz development and client relations, but tech wasn't her thing. Everything tech-wise that kept the company afloat came from me. I asked him why he kept quiet all these years. He replied, "The way things were set up, Linda called the shots. Kevin was meant to step into her shoes. You had a 20% share and seemed content teaching at the college. It wasn't my place to rewrite company history." After a pause, he mentioned that Linda had pushed things 3 weeks ago. When I asked what he meant, he explained that she wanted him at the will reading on Tuesday as a technical witness. Sarah Williams needed him to confirm that all my original development work was the real deal. I collapsed onto the couch, feeling the weight of it all. Kevin's about to get a reality check. He's going to discover what his dad really did for the family business. Maybe it's for the best. After Michael hung up, I made some coffee and started organizing my development documents on the kitchen table. Patent filings for cloud inventory systems from March '96, handwritten database algorithms from August '97, and signed client interface specs from December '99. I held 25 patents as the main inventor from those early days at TechFlow. Most of these papers had been forgotten. During the divorce, Linda's lawyer focused on the money side and business stuff. Nobody paid attention to patents or intellectual property. The assumption was that a small tech company wouldn't have valuable IP. How wrong they were. By 2024, just the licensing from those patents brought in about $8 million. So, out of the blue, my phone dings with a message from a number I'd never seen before. Turns out, it was Thomas Miller from a patent law firm. He wanted to discuss the upcoming will reading scheduled for Tuesday. He introduced himself as Linda's intellectual property lawyer since 2019 and said we needed to talk about those ancient TechFlow patents before the estate meeting. I just sat there, staring at that message for about 10 minutes. Obviously, Linda wasn't only out to set the record straight about TechFlow's past. She had built an entire case, lined up witnesses, and gathered a pile of evidence ready to blow up Kevin's understanding of his parents' story, the company he was about to inherit, and even his own identity. Kevin was under the false impression that Tuesday was just about signing some papers and stepping into his role running his mom's empire. He had no idea he'd soon be receiving the most eye-opening history lesson of his life. Then, at the crack of dawn on Monday, my phone buzzed again. It was Kevin's assistant, Jennifer, on the line. She was organizing a leadership meeting at TechFlow for the day after, right after the will reading. She goes, "Mr. Johnson, Kevin would like you to attend. He thought it might be nice for you to be there as they plan out the transition, sort of a farewell in Mrs. Johnson's honor." Naturally, I was curious about what the meeting would entail. Kevin intended to unveil his grand strategy for the company's future. The whole gang would be there, the board members, department heads, top clients, about 40 people in total. I almost said no, but something about Jennifer's tone hinted that this was more than just a polite gesture. Kevin seemed to be setting the stage for some big revelation. So I asked, "When's it happening?" "Tuesday at 2 p.m., right in the main conference room at TechFlow headquarters," she replied. So, here's the situation. Jennifer hangs up, and it suddenly clicks what Kevin's plotting. He wants me right there, in the thick of it, sitting front row center. Why? It's his moment to shine, like he's putting on a show, with his newfound leadership as the headliner. With me in attendance, it serves up this contrast between his success and my perceived downfall for everyone to see. By Monday afternoon, I hopped in my car and drove over to TechFlow's headquarters to confirm my hunches. I hadn't been there in ages, and wow, had it evolved. The parking lot was bigger, the office space had grown, and the lobby had a sleek glass design with this massive photo of Linda and the title, Founder and Visionary Leader, displayed proudly beside it. The receptionist didn't know me from Adam, but she was polite, gave me a visitor badge, and let me take a look around the first floor. They had this new timeline wall showing off TechFlow's history, with Linda Johnson clearly recognized as the mastermind who foresaw the power of cloud-based business solutions before they were a thing. My contributions made the cut too, albeit in minuscule print. It gave me a nod for providing technical support from '95 to 2010, years and years of sweat, pounding out 25 patents, those insanely long workdays in the gritty beginnings, all boiled down to being technical support. I snapped some pictures of the timeline on my phone, and that's when I saw Michael Davis coming my way from the elevator. "Knew you'd come by," he says. "You really need to check this out." Michael took me up to the second floor and into TechFlow's original development lab. Same place where, way back in '98, I taught our first set of programmers. "Kevin's been busy rearranging things," Michael mentioned as he opened the door. Inside, it was like a temple to Linda's business triumphs. Trophies, magazine clippings, photos from ribbon cuttings, and key client events. There was even a glass display highlighting contracts Linda secured, press clippings, and her signed-off business strategies. But what really caught me off guard was right in the middle, my old development computer from '95. That ancient beige box I'd put together myself, resting next to plaques that celebrated it as the machine where Linda Johnson supposedly designed TechFlow's first big-time inventory system. "Kevin just got this all set up last week," Michael said, letting me know Kevin's readying a speech for the next day, pumping up his mother's technical genius and achievements. Seeing that old computer brought a flood of memories of piecing it together bit by bit, from the motherboard to the graphics card and hard drives. I remembered installing Linux on it and struggling through the setup phase. I even wrote the first 1,000 lines of code for TechFlow on it. But here we are, spinning tales about Linda's prowess in coding. Linda couldn't program a digital clock, I remarked bluntly. Michael just shrugged and said, I know, but Kevin doesn't. He's completely convinced she was a tech genius. I was curious about how this all began. Michael explained that for 15 years, a careful narrative had been built. Linda never outright claimed to be a programmer, but she didn't correct anyone who assumed she was. Kevin only knew the polished tale. Michael then showed me his phone, displaying a screenshot of TechFlow's updated website. The new About Us section features Linda's picture with a glowing biography that labels her a pioneer in cloud technologies and database management. It portrays her as a visionary who revolutionized business inventories and customer relations. This went live yesterday, Michael pointed out. I skimmed through Linda's touted life story, filled with vibrant claims of her groundbreaking tech leadership. It was pure fiction, but well-crafted, getting the nod from the current big names at TechFlow. Michael mentioned how Kevin's all excited to declare he's following his mom's tech legacy. He's calling it the Linda Johnson Advanced Systems Project, pouring $50,000 into hiring 2 new developers. The aim? To create new inventory tools using what he believes are Linda's original algorithms. I nearly burst out laughing. Kevin can't even read code. No worries on his part, though. He's got people for that. The catch? The new programmers have no clue they're essentially reconstructing what they think are Linda's original systems, all the while reverse engineering my work from years ago. Life really does twist around in unexpected ways. Incredibly, the whole genius tech solution idea actually paid off. Crazy, right? That was the bombshell on Tuesday afternoon. Kevin's gearing up to launch the Linda Johnson Advanced Systems Project to a crowd of 40 industry leaders, claiming he's carrying on his mother's programming innovations. As Michael and I headed back to the elevator, he shared more details. The tech team's been struggling for 3 weeks to figure out the system architecture. They've been asking about Linda's coding methods and her development process. My answer? Point them to Kevin. He tells them to solve it on their own because that's what real innovators do, he claims. When we reached the lobby, Kevin walked in, sharply dressed for a meeting with a navy suit, red tie, and a leather briefcase. He caught sight of me with Michael and his expression grew stern. Dad, what brings you here? He asked. Jennifer invited me to tomorrow's transition meeting, I told him. I meant, why are you here today? He pressed further. Just reminiscing, I said, glancing at the company's timeline. Quite an interesting version of TechFlow's history there. Kevin looked at the timeline, then back at me. It's an accurate account based on documentation and business records. I'm sure it is, I said. Something bugging you, Dad? Nope. Just wondered if you've come across my development notes recently. Which notes? The ones from 95 to 2010. The algorithm specs, patent applications, source code documentation, the technical core of what TechFlow grew into. Kevin's jaw tightened. I reviewed Linda's records regarding business strategies, client acquisition reports, and financial forecasts, the real pillars of TechFlow's success. Of course. Michael, you've got tasks waiting, I believe? Michael nodded agreeably and headed back to the elevator. Once he was out of earshot, Kevin stepped closer. Tomorrow's about honoring Mom's legacy and securing TechFlow's future, he whispered. It's not the time to dig up old history or derail the narrative with irrelevant tech specifics. Got it? Yeah, got it. Good, because if you try to mess with me or screw up this leadership change, that 20% share won't protect you from a defamation lawsuit. Kevin adjusted his tie, checked his cell, and made his way to the elevator. See you tomorrow, Dad. Don't let me down. When Tuesday rolled around, I dragged myself to Williams and Associates law firm on the 47th floor. The conference room had these massive windows offering a killer view of downtown Dallas. Kevin arrived 15 minutes ahead, looking sharp in his best suit and carrying a leather folder filled with press releases about his new job as TechFlow's CEO. I was sitting across him at this shiny mahogany table. Joining us, there was Sarah Williams, Michael Davis, the patent lawyer, Thomas Miller, and Linda's accountant, Robert Taylor. Kevin had the smarts to bring along his legal advisor, James Morrison. Before we kicked things off, Sarah gave us a reminder. Linda Johnson put a lot of thought into this will. She left no doubt about how she wanted her assets distributed, and for good reason. Kevin nodded confidently. Mom always thought of everything. Sarah took out Linda's thick file, about 3 inches thick, all nicely sectioned with colored tabs and personal notes. Linda's key concern was ensuring TechFlow maintained leadership that was grounded in the company's core principles. Absolutely, Kevin chimed in. That's why she prepared me over the last 5 years. Actually, Kevin, that's not completely true. Sarah picked up a sealed envelope meant to be read aloud in full. She broke the wax seal and opened a 3-page letter penned in Linda's tidy handwriting. This is Linda's final word on her estate and her wishes for TechFlow systems. She insisted it be read exactly as written. Kevin leaned forward, ready to jot down notes. Sarah began. To my son Kevin, my ex-husband David, and all present, I have to confess a falsehood that's hung over our family for way too long. TechFlow Systems was not my creation. I was no tech innovator or a code genius. Truth is, I couldn't code if my life depended on it. Really, it was David Johnson, my ex-husband and Kevin's father, who built TechFlow from the ground up while I managed the admin and dealt with clients. David created every algorithm. David wrote every line of code. So David was the real mastermind behind it all. He was the one who came up with the original idea in a garage, eventually turning it into a tech giant worth millions. During our marriage, I took the credit for his work, and even after we split up, I kept spinning that story. Kevin dropped his pen, stunned. What? He exclaimed as Sarah continued reading. I kept up the facade because it was easier than facing the truth. That I took 80% of David's achievements through legal loopholes after our divorce. Kevin, you've thought I was the genius and that your dad was the failure. But today, that deceit ends here. David Johnson was the real creator of TechFlow Systems. Every technical innovation, every competitive edge, every patent that made the company successful, all was due to David's brilliance and efforts. Kevin's eyes darted from me to Sarah and back to the letter, struggling to believe. This can't be right, he protested. Dad's just some community college teacher. He lives in a small apartment. Why isn't he rolling in cash if he built TechFlow? I said quietly, because during the divorce, your mom claimed 80% of it, and I stupidly gave away control of what I started. Sarah moved on to the second page. I'm changing my will to return David Johnson his deserved 80% stake in TechFlow Systems, alongside my personal assets, investments, and life insurance. Kevin, I bequeath you $1 with this letter, and my hope that you come to appreciate the father you've undervalued for 15 years. Silence took over the room. Kevin stared at the document like it was some foreign script. Wait, he eventually said, flustered. This isn't true. Mom started TechFlow. She received awards, graced magazine covers, the whole 9 yards. Thomas Miller opened his briefcase and spread a pile of papers on the table. These are the original patent filings for TechFlow's core technologies. 25 patents from 1995 to 2008 all have David Johnson listed as the lead inventor. Kevin grabbed the stack and flipped through them with rising panic. These could be fake. Anyone can file a patent. Sarah cut in. Mr. Johnson, can you verify your role as the genius behind TechFlow? I asked, reaching into my briefcase and pulling out an old development notebook from 1995. It was filled with handwritten algorithms, database designs, and system blueprints, all signed and dated way before TechFlow was officially up and running. "Take a look at this cloud-based inventory blueprint," I pointed out, flipping to a page dated March 12, 1995. "We've got database enhancements for client access portals, specs for small business interfaces." Handing the notebook to Kevin, I told him, "This is supposed to be your mom's masterwork, but it's all in my handwriting, all crafted in my garage way before we even hired our first employee." Michael Davis cleared his throat. "Kevin, I've been part of TechFlow for 22 years. I was right there with your dad for every crucial technical milestone until 2010. Your mom was fantastic at managing sales and admin, but she didn't write a single line of code or design any systems." Kevin scanned the room, hoping someone would jump in and challenge what he was hearing. "You're all lying to me. I saw my mom build TechFlow," he protested. "You witnessed her managing it," I corrected him. "That's a completely different ballgame." Robert Taylor, the accountant for Linda, laid another paper on the table. "Here's a financial breakdown. Mr. Johnson invested $280,000 into capital, equipment, and unpaid labor between 1995 and 1998. Your mom contributed $47,000 for administrative support." "But she led as CEO for 14 years, Kevin insisted. "She increased the staff from 12 to 230 and expanded across 4 states. Sarah chimed in. "Your mom was a phenomenal business manager, but the founding of the company, that credit goes to your dad." Sarah turned to the last page of Linda's letter. "Kevin," she read, "you've always thought success gets handed down and failure sticks forever. You've judged your dad based on his circumstances, equating them to personal failings. Today, you see that situations change with paperwork, but true character shines through actions. Your dad did something incredible from the ground up. I wrongfully took credit for that. I'm setting the record straight to honor what was truly his. How you deal with this truth will show if you've inherited my ability to grow or my penchant for arrogance." Kevin slouched back, overwhelmed, staring blankly at the table. "Everything. House, investment accounts, the whole shebang." Sarah nodded. "That's right. Your father's now at the helm of TechFlow Systems and stands to benefit the most from your mom's estate," she affirmed. Kevin just gaped at me, processing everything. "So, you knew yesterday when you swung by TechFlow? You saw this coming?" he asked finally. "I suspected your mom was orchestrating this for over a year and a half, but who'd ever believe me? I was just some washed-up entrepreneur living in a regular apartment, hardly the picture of founder of a $45 million company," I answered. Kevin didn't have much else to say after that. Sarah placed another document in front of me. "Mr. Johnson, these papers are your ticket back to controlling TechFlow Systems. From now on, you're the chairman and CEO," she stated as I signed them with Kevin watching quietly. It took 24 long years to get back what I started, but it was a bittersweet victory. Kevin looked bewildered, as though his world just got turned upside down. Sarah had one more item for Kevin. "Your mother left you this personal note," she said, handing him an envelope. He opened it slowly, hands shaking. After reading for a moment, he glanced my way. "She thinks I owe you an apology," he said, seemingly in disbelief. "Do you agree?" he asked, while carefully folding the note back and putting it in his pocket. "I need some time to wrap my head around all this," he murmured. A couple of hours later, I found myself back at TechFlow as its new leader. The lobby seemed strangely smaller and less daunting than before. Of course, Linda's portrait as the brains and face of the company would have to come down. Jennifer, Kevin's assistant, greeted me at the front desk. She seemed a bit confused, but kept it professional, announcing, "Mr. Johnson, Kevin's looking to cancel today's transition meeting because of some hiccups with the estate." I shook my head. Nope, the meeting stays. We're just taking it in a different direction. Heading up to the second floor, I walked into the conference room where around 40 folks from TechFlow, board members, and a few key clients were waiting. Kevin was nowhere in sight as Michael Davis got the presentation ready. He gave me a nod as I took my place at the head of the table. Thanks for being here, folks, I began. So, folks, you were all set to hear Kevin Johnson talking about the future of TechFlow today. I started off, catching the murmurs and the phone checking going around the room. But instead, you're stuck with me. I'm David Johnson, Kevin's old man, Linda's ex-partner, and the guy who once held a 20% chunk of this business. I paused, letting the gravity of my words settle in. Now, here's what a lot of you probably don't know. I was the one who kicked off TechFlow Systems back in 1995. The initial code, the foundational database, the tech that got us on the map, that was me. The buzz in the room turned up a notch. Patricia Stevens, part of the board, raised a hand. But I thought Linda Johnson was the founder. That's been the tale for over 20 years. Well, turns out that tale is a bit skewed, I clarified. This morning, I wound up with a majority stake in TechFlow. Linda's will gave back her 80% share and provided proof of my role in this company's creation. I motioned for Michael to kick off the presentation. The first slide put up my TechFlow patent filings from '96. We were talking 25 patents covering things like cloud-based inventory systems, enhanced databases, user interfaces, all tied to my name from '95 to '08. The whole room was suddenly dead silent. The next slide came on, showing my handwritten notes from '95, back when I was in the garage cooking this stuff up while Linda handled the office side. Then the third slide displayed emails between Linda and her lawyer, revealing her intention to clear the air about TechFlow's true beginnings. She spent a year and a half preparing to give back ownership to the real founder. She wanted Kevin and everyone else to know who really built this company. Just then, Kevin slipped in as the fourth slide went up. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, slinking to a chair at the back without meeting anyone's gaze. It was clearly a shock for him. All right, here's how it rolled out. For ages, something like 14 years, people at TechFlow pegged Linda as the trailblazing boss and me, well, as her unsuccessful ex. That version made sense to lots of folks, but it wasn't the whole picture. James Murphy, another board member, chimed in, "Mr. Johnson, nothing personal, but Linda's been stellar at the helm. What happened at the start doesn't change that she turned TechFlow into a regional powerhouse." And I replied, "Absolutely, Linda was top-notch as a leader, no question. But taking the reins and igniting the initial vision? Two entirely different skills." I moved on to the second slide, laying out TechFlow's new org chart. I'll be the one calling the shots now as chairman and CEO. Kevin will carry on with strategic development, but under my supervision. Michael Davis stays as chief tech officer. Everything else pretty much stays the same. Patricia Stevens seemed uneasy about it. "What about Kevin's special projects, like the Linda Johnson Advanced Systems Initiative?" she queried, while Kevin seemed lost in thought. I explained, "That's getting shelved. They were trying to crack algorithms they thought Linda came up with. Turns out those were my creations, so it's only logical I take over." I faced Kevin directly. "Kev, you've got a knack for business growth, and that's key for TechFlow. I hope you consider sticking around and diving more into tech." Kevin finally looked up, curious. "Learn from who? From you? From Michael? From some tech stuff that always went over my head?" The room held its breath. "What if I decide to leave?" he challenged. "Well, then you walk away with fantastic experience and glowing references, but without deeper tech knowledge behind your career." After a pause, he wondered about the training, learning to read code, getting databases, seeing how those algorithms he marketed solve real-world problems. "Would you teach me to program?" he asked. I replied, "I'll teach you to understand the tech platform your mom built her empire on, and that I originally set up." Kevin nodded slowly. "All right, I'll stick around." So after the dust settled a bit, I had to dive into the nitty-gritty, dealing with client meetings and rejigging staff schedules, always keeping a cool, collected vibe. When the office finally cleared out, it was just me and Kevin left. "This is a lot to process," he admits, realizing that what he believed about his family wasn't the real deal. "I understand now. Mom's letter said I was someone worth being proud of. She thought I was smart, a real trailblazer." Kevin gathered his things, paused at the door, and said, "Hey, Dad, do you think you could show me some of that old code tomorrow? I'd love to see what you actually did." For the first time in what felt like ages, my son was looking at me with curiosity instead of skepticism. "Of course, Kev, I'd be happy to." Within 2 days of the will being read, the news was all over Dallas's tech circles about TechFlow's big shakeup and surprising origin story. The story was too juicy and had too much proof to be swept under the rug. Kevin's LinkedIn post, paying tribute to his mom's tech legacy, quietly disappeared, and soon folks were asking tough questions about his family and how TechFlow really started. 3 major clients reached out, worrying about the impact of all these changes on their contracts. They'd known Linda for years and weren't sure what things would look like now with me back in the mix. That Thursday morning, I found myself at Meridian Supply, having a conversation with Tom Bradley, one of our major clients. Tom had known Linda for what felt like forever, and had his doubts about the whole ownership flip. "No offense, David, but for ages, Linda's been the face of TechFlow's tech successes. She gave conference talks, and she was all over our database projects. So what's the deal now?" Anyone could come to love learning this stuff. "You don't think Linda was just buttering you up to keep things cool at home, do you?" I opened my laptop and jumped into TechFlow's old code. "Check out this inventory management program your business has relied on since 2005. I originally built it in '98, tweaked it in 2003, and made it cloud compatible in 2007. I skimmed through the endless lines of code, all sporting my developer signature and timestamps. Every feature, enhancement, and security measure was meticulously logged with my name on it." Tom, deep in thought, stared at the screen for what felt like a while. Linda didn't really share any technical details with us. Her thing was interpreting business advantages and mapping out implementation plans. That's because Linda had a knack for turning intricate tech potential into real-world solutions, even though she might not have been able to dive into the code herself. Would you say she was more of a marketer than a techie? She was a bit of both. Her salesmanship, business growth acumen, and strategic thinking, they're all engineering in a way. Linda was the mastermind behind TechFlow's business wins, building on the technical foundation I set. By Friday, Michael Davis noted that the team's mood seemed unexpectedly steady. Most folks at TechFlow hadn't really thought much about how the company started. What mattered to them was job security, ongoing projects, and having capable leadership. The younger programmers were buzzing, Michael shared. They're excited about learning from someone whose systems have kept running strong for 25 years. But for Kevin, things weren't so easy. He had built up his image in the industry as Linda Johnson's successor, and now his future as the head of TechFlow was clouded with doubt about his actual abilities. Jennifer arranged a sit-down for Kevin and me the following Monday. Kevin walked into what used to be Linda's office, now mine, looking worn out. "I've been thinking a lot about Mom's letter," he confessed. "She said I acted superior because I confused my situation with my character, and that really hit home. She also mentioned how character shows through actions, not your position." He slumped into the chair where Linda made her decisions for years. "I wasn't acting so great towards you, was I?" "You believed what you were told, which is understandable." "No, Dad. I latched on to the worst version of you just to make myself feel better. It was unreasonable. It was arrogance. Kevin yanked his phone out from his pocket, showing me a conversation he'd had with his girlfriend, Emma. She had called it quits on Tuesday night, admitting she was keener on building a bond with Linda Johnson's son over David Johnson's. Apparently, in her social circle, that held some clout. As I went through the messages, Emma's responses were cold, largely revolving around changes in Kevin's financial status and family lore. "I'm sorry, Kevin." "Don't be," he said. She was eyeing the inheritance, not me. It's a good thing this came to light now. Stowing the phone away, Kevin pondered aloud. "Back when you were building TechFlow from your garage, what was your version of success?" "Honestly," I admitted, "I just hoped to snag enough clients to leave behind the repair jobs and dive into coding full-time. Maybe hire a couple of folks for tech support. Ever dream of $45 million? Nope. My target was finding fascinating tech challenges that'd give me enough to take care of my family. Then everything slipped away with the divorce, family included, and I spent 15 years feeling like a flop. How did you handle that?" I sank into the seat that was once Linda's, now mine. I just kept building, smaller projects perhaps, but still hustling. Teaching helped too, seeing someone light up doing their first database query. Can't beat that feeling of engineering success. Kevin was lost in thought. "I want to learn programming." "We can start whenever you're ready," I replied. "What's the first lesson?" "We go through problems just like I did with my community college students, step by step. Break down big tasks into small, manageable bits and make them work." For the first time, Kevin looked genuinely happy since all this began. That's a lesson anyone would hold dear. A lesson I wish I'd picked up from Dad ages ago. But hey, better late than never. Fast forward 6 months, and you'll find Kevin settled in my garage every Saturday, diving into programming. This isn't an ordinary garage. It's where I assembled the first ever TechFlow systems back in '95. Now it's decked out with top-of-the-line workstations and whiteboards scribbled with algorithm ideas. Kevin's eyes are glued to the laptop, concentrating intently. "Can we go over the inventory tracking function again?" he inquires, eager to crack the code on managing simultaneous users. I walk him through it, slowly, methodically. His questions have evolved, from business-focused to purely technical. His inner programmer is awakening. "It's incredible," he notes. "I didn't realize how much math is behind making software function properly." TechFlow is thriving, and as the Dallas Business Journal announced, it's thanks to the founders' return to leadership. We nailed it with $52 million in Q3 revenue, recruited 12 new programmers, and even opened a new branch in Austin. Kevin's got a knack for blending tech knowledge with business savvy. He's now fluent in both, able to grasp the technical potential and turn it into business gold. "Dad, I've got an idea to enhance the client portal," he said during a team meeting yesterday. "Let's cache the database queries for regular inventory checks. It'll boost response times and sharpen user experience." Michael Davis was thrilled. "Kevin's killing it. He'll be tweaking our algorithms in no time." Just last month, Kevin snagged an invitation to speak at the Southwest Technology Leadership Conference, a spot Linda used to fill with her cloud computing talks. But Kevin's angle was fresh, highlighting the importance of technical foundations and understanding engineering in business solutions. After his presentation, 3 attendees approached Kevin, eager to dive deeper into programming. He nailed 2 questions on the spot and promised to look into the third. "I swear that was more fulfilling than any business speech I've given," he confided later. In TechFlow's lobby, Linda's picture still holds its place, tagged Business Development Leader and Strategic Visionary. Right next to it is a recent portrait of me, marked Founder and Chief Technology Officer. The office timeline shows it all: David Johnson's innovation, Linda Johnson's business triumphs, and our ongoing growth through teamwork. Kevin drops by my place every so often, typically carrying some takeout and ready to dive into conversations about coding or business strategies. Just last week, he popped in with Chinese food and a bunch of code he had written for a client project. "I think this might work, but I'm not entirely confident it's as efficient as it can be," he said, spreading the code out on my kitchen table. After having a look, I suggested a few areas for improvement, and he immediately started making adjustments. Kevin's way of coding is different from mine. He's more meticulous, aims for clarity over style. "You're becoming quite the developer," I commented. "And I'm becoming the son I should have been back in the day," he replied. "The real challenge isn't over yet. We're still in the thick of it. Kevin needs to earn his way through his own skills, not merely by living up to old expectations. Meanwhile, I'm handling a big company after spending years teaching others. We're both busy redefining our father-son dynamic, aiming for mutual respect instead of dwelling on past missteps. But we're making progress. Kevin recently introduced me to his new girlfriend, Sarah, last month. She's a software engineer at Microsoft, someone who understands both the tech and business worlds. When introducing me, Kevin said, "This is my dad, the founder of TechFlow Systems, who taught me that building genuine things means more than taking credit for someone else's work." That introduction felt different, but what really made me proud was watching Kevin explain a database optimization issue to Sarah and seeing her give him a nod of professional respect. Kevin has realized that achieving success isn't a birthright. It's something you earn through knowledge, effort, and real contributions. And I've learned it's never too late to pass on the lessons I should have shared earlier. True character? It's what you craft when no one's looking over your shoulder. More often than not, the real victories come from the conversations behind closed doors rather than from courtroom dramas. And sometimes the best way to outdo someone is simply by being honest.